The fluorescent lights of Westlake Academy flickered overhead as May clutched her worn textbooks tighter against her chest, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. She could feel their eyes on her before she even rounded the corner. Vanessa and her two shadows, waiting by the lockers like predators sizing up their prey. 6 months at this prestigious private school had taught May to recognize the warning signs. The sudden drop in hallway chatter, the not-so-subtle pointing, the way other students mysteriously found reasons to look away. "Well, if it isn't our little scholarship charity case," Vanessa called out, her voice carrying down the hallway with practiced precision. "Nice outfit. Did the donation bin have a spring sale?" May felt her cheeks burn as she tried to slide past them toward her locker. The second-hand uniform her mother had proudly presented to her after working double shifts for weeks suddenly felt like a brand marking her as an outsider. She kept her eyes fixed on the scuffed tile floor, counting steps. Just 12 more to her locker. 11. 10. "I'm talking to you," Vanessa said, stepping directly into May's path. The hallway had grown quieter now, other students slowing their pace, their expressions a mixture of morbid curiosity and relief that they weren't today's target. "I need to get to class," May mumbled, her voice barely audible. She hated how small she sounded, how the confidence she felt in every other aspect of her life evaporated in these hallways. "Oh, she speaks." Vanessa's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "And here I thought maybe English wasn't your first language." She exaggerated the last words, drawing laughs from her friends. May felt something twist inside her chest. Her English was perfect, better than Vanessa's, if their literature grades were any indication. But it was just another way they tried to make her feel foreign, different, less than. Her mother had warned her about this when she'd received the scholarship, had prepared her for the fact that some people would never see beyond her background. "Just ignore them," her mother had advised, her eyes tired but determined after another late night at the hospital where she worked as a custodian. "Your education is what matters. These kids, in 10 years, they'll be working for you." May had nodded then, clinging to her mother's words like a life raft. But her mother didn't see how it was day after day. The isolation, the whispers, the casual cruelty designed to remind her that she didn't belong. "My English is fine," May finally said, lifting her chin slightly. "Excuse me." She attempted to step around Vanessa, but the girl's perfectly manicured hand shot out, pressing against the locker and blocking May's path. The metallic clang echoed through the now silent hallway. "We're just trying to have a friendly conversation," Vanessa said, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Don't be so sensitive. That's your problem, you know. You take everything so seriously." May felt her heart racing, a caged bird against her ribs. She was acutely aware of the growing audience, of the teachers who conveniently never seemed to be around when these conversations happened, of how speaking up only ever made things worse. "I have calculus," May said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I can't be late again." "Oh, right. Wouldn't want to jeopardize that precious scholarship," Vanessa said, rolling her eyes. "God forbid you have to go back to whatever place you came from." The place she came from was a small apartment 15 minutes away, where her mother grew herbs on the windowsill and where May had built a small shrine to her father after he passed away 3 years ago. It was where she practiced her forms every morning before dawn. The apartment too small for full movement but her discipline unwavering. It was home, and Vanessa made it sound like some distant, undesirable planet. "Just let me through," May said, hating the pleading note that had crept into her voice. Something shifted in Vanessa's expression then. A hardening, a calculation. She glanced at her friends, a silent communication passing between them that made May's stomach drop. "You know, I've always wondered," Vanessa said, her voice lowering conspiratorially even as her volume ensured everyone could still hear. "If everything about you is as cheap as your clothes." Before May could process what was happening, Vanessa's hand moved from the locker to the hem of May's skirt, fingers pinching the fabric with deliberate slowness. The hallway seemed to collectively hold its breath. "Let's find out, shall we?" Vanessa said, her smile turning cruel as her friends moved closer, forming a tight circle around May, blocking her from view of anyone who might intervene. As Vanessa's fingers gripped the fabric of May's skirt, Time seemed to slow. The hallway's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the crowd's collective intake of breath creating a vacuum of sound. For a suspended moment, May felt as though she were watching herself from above. The cornered girl with downcast eyes, the predatory circle closing in, the hand about to deliver the ultimate humiliation. Then something shifted. 8 years of disciplined training surged through May's body like electricity. The wooden floors of Master Chen's dojo flashed in her mind. The countless hours of practice, the bruises, the falls, the triumphs. The black belt she'd earned 3 months ago, which now lay carefully folded in her dresser drawer at home. Don't! The word left May's lips not as a plea but as a command. Her voice suddenly steady and unfamiliar even to her own ears. Vanessa's eyebrows shot up, her lips curling into an amused sneer. Or what? She challenged, giving the fabric a testing tug. Her friends laughed, the sound sharp and grating. The textbooks in May's arms dropped to the floor with a thunderous slam that made several onlookers jump. In the same fluid motion, her right hand clamped around Vanessa's wrist, applying precise pressure to the nerve points that instantly caused the girl's fingers to release the fabric. What the? Vanessa began, but her words cut off in a startled gasp as May executed a perfect wrist lock, twisting just enough to force Vanessa down to one knee without causing actual injury. The movement was controlled, deliberate, exactly as Master Chun had taught her. Use only the force necessary, never more. I said don't, May repeated, her voice calm even as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The hallway had gone completely silent, the only sound Vanessa's surprised breathing. For 3 seconds, May held the position, meeting Vanessa's shocked eyes. Then she released her, stepping back and assuming a neutral stance, hands open at her sides, ready but not threatening. Vanessa scrambled backward, cradling her wrist though it wasn't injured. You're crazy, she sputtered, her face flushed with humiliation rather than pain. Her friends, who moments ago had been closing in, now hesitated, confusion replacing their earlier confidence. I'm not crazy, May said, her voice carrying in the silent hallway. I'm a second-degree black belt who's tired of being your target. She smoothed her skirt with deliberate calmness, though her heart was racing. And I've been polite about it until now. A boy in the crowd let out a low whistle of appreciation, breaking the tension. Someone else clapped, the sound quickly dying out in the stunned atmosphere. Vanessa struggled to her feet, her carefully constructed aura of superiority crumbling. You can't just... You attacked me. I'll report you. For what? Self-defense. May bent down to retrieve her scattered textbooks, never taking her eyes off the group. Years of sparring had taught her never to lower her guard until the match was truly over. There are at least 30 witnesses who saw you try to lift my skirt. Would you like to explain that to Principal Warner? Uncertainty flickered across Vanessa's face as she glanced around, seeming to realize for the first time how many people had witnessed her actions. The crowd, sensing the shift in power, began to murmur. This isn't over, Vanessa hissed, but the threat sounded hollow even to her own ears. She took another step back, then turned abruptly, pushing through the gathered students with her friends hurrying after her. As they disappeared around the corner, May finally allowed herself to exhale. Her hands trembled slightly as the adrenaline began to ebb, but she kept her posture straight, her expression neutral, just as she would after a tournament match. The bell rang, startling everyone back into motion. As students began to disperse, several of them looked at May with new expressions. Respect, curiosity, even a hint of admiration. A girl May recognized from her history class approached hesitantly. That was incredible, she said, handing May the last of her fallen notebooks. Where did you learn to do that? May accepted the notebook with a small nod of thanks. My grandfather's dojo, she said simply. I've been training since I was 7. I had no idea, the girl said, falling into step beside May as they headed toward the classrooms. You never mentioned it. May shrugged. No one ever asked. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Westlake Academy as May pushed open the heavy front doors, stepping out into the crisp autumn air. For the first time since she'd started at this school, she walked with her head high, shoulders back, no longer trying to make herself invisible. The weight that had pressed down on her for months felt lighter somehow. Not entirely gone but manageable in a way it hadn't been before. As she descended the stone steps, she spotted her mother's old sedan idling at the curb, 15 minutes early as always. A pang of guilt shot through her. She hadn't told her mother about the bullying, not wanting to add to the woman's already considerable burdens. Now there would be questions she couldn't avoid. "May, wait up." She turned to see Jason Chun jogging toward her, his backpack bouncing against his shoulder. She recognized him from AP Physics, though they'd never spoken before today. "Hey," he said, slightly out of breath. "That thing in the hallway? It was badass." May felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I shouldn't have done it." "Are you kidding?" Vanessa's been terrorizing half the school for years. No one's ever stood up to her. He shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. "Anyway, a bunch of us are starting a study group for midterms. We meet at the library on Thursdays. You should come." Before she could respond, another voice called out, "May!" It was Priya from her literature class, walking with two other girls May recognized but had never spoken to. They approached, forming a small semicircle, so different from the threatening one earlier. "We were wondering if you wanted to grab boba after school tomorrow," Priya said, her smile genuine. "We usually go to the place on Maple Street." May blinked, momentarily speechless. 6 months of eating lunch alone, of group projects where no one chose her, of weekend plans she heard about but was never included in, and now, suddenly, invitations. I have karate practice," she said finally, the truth slipping out before she could consider how it might sound like a rejection. But Priya's smile didn't falter. "Friday, then? Or whenever works for you." "Friday would be nice," May said, a small smile forming. "Thank you." As the group dispersed with casual waves and "see you tomorrows" that felt surreal, May continued toward her mother's car, a strange lightness in her chest. She could see her mother through the windshield, eyebrows raised in question at the unusual social interaction she'd just witnessed. May slid into the passenger seat, placing her backpack carefully at her feet. "New friends?" her mother asked in Mandarin, her tone casual but her eyes sharp with maternal perception. "Maybe," May answered honestly. She buckled her seatbelt, unsure how to explain everything that had happened. Her mother put the car in drive but didn't pull away from the curb immediately. "Something's different," she observed, studying her daughter's face. "Did something happen today?" May looked out the window at the school building, imposing and elegant with its brick facade and manicured grounds. This morning it had felt like a battlefield. Now it was just a school. "I stood up for myself," she said simply. Her mother was quiet for a moment, then reached over to squeeze May's hand. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said softly. "He always said the true purpose of martial arts is not to fight, but to build the confidence to avoid fighting." "I didn't avoid it entirely," May admitted, guilt creeping back in. "I used a wrist lock on a girl who was being unkind." To her surprise, her mother chuckled. "Did you hurt her?" "No," May said quickly. "Just surprised her. And maybe embarrassed her a little." Her mother nodded, satisfied. "Then you used exactly what was needed, no more." She pulled away from the curb, merging into the after-school traffic. "Sometimes people only understand strength. You showed yours." As they drove home, May found herself thinking about tomorrow, not with the usual dread but with a cautious optimism. She knew Vanessa might retaliate, that one moment of standing up for herself wouldn't magically transform her school experience. The system that had allowed such bullying to flourish remained unchanged. But something fundamental had shifted inside her. The girl who practiced forms in the cramped living room before dawn, who honored her grandfather's teachings and earned her black belt through years of discipline. That girl and the scholarship student at Westlake were no longer separate identities. They had merged into one person, May, complete and undiminished. When they reached a red light, her mother glanced over. "Will you tell me about it? What happened today?" May took a deep breath. "Yes," she said. "But first, I want to tell you about what's been happening for the past 6 months." As the light turned green and they continued toward home, May began to speak, her voice growing stronger with each word. No longer hiding, no longer ashamed. Outside the car windows, the afternoon sun transformed ordinary streets into pathways of gold, illuminating the route she had walked countless times but was only now truly seeing.